Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. Ryan Kaufman coming your way live from Boise once again tonight. Air Force women's basketball taking on the University of Record here in Boise, that being Boise State. Big game tonight for Air Force. Talk about that in just a little bit. That's coming up at 6:30 on Extra Sports 1300. In the meantime, I appreciate you tuning in, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or the streaming apps of both of those radio stations, which are both free to download, both free to use, and are both sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-24-7, 1313. Heavy on the Olympics here as we are in the third period of the quarterfinal matchup between the U.S. and Sweden. U.S. leading 1-0 right now. Quinn Hughes with the goal, famously known for being the second best defenseman in the world. It was the Hughes brothers who assisted on the goal. It was redirected out front by Dylan Larkin. My apologies. Still, Quinn Hughes, second best defenseman in the world. But U.S. up 1-0. Sweden putting on some pressure. And what has been a more compelling day of Olympic hockey than the previous ones have been for the most part. And I thought this thing would exactly happen. I talked about it on yesterday's show. We weren't even down to what the Four Nations face-off was in these prelims. I mean, with all due respect to these other teams, there's a clear separation of powers in the hockey world here. So once you started to thin out the herd a little bit, you would get better hockey games, even with Canada, who today was pushed to the absolute brink by Marty Necas and Czechia before Mitch Marner won the game in overtime to keep, I think, most people's hopes alive for a Canada-U.S. final. And I tweeted this out after the game at Gingerly Tweets. If Canada wins a gold without going through the U.S. and vice versa, there are going to be questions asked, especially if the U.S. wins a gold. Let's say Czechia beats Canada today. U.S. beats Sweden, wins it, and then goes on to win the tournament. There will be questions asked about whether the best team won. We have locked into this mindset that it has to be Canada versus the U.S. And as an American and as a hockey fan, yeah, Canada versus the U.S. is the theater that I would most like to see. But I think it would have been kind of cool if Czechia would have won. Because they weren't even in the Four Nations face-off. They're kind of them and Slovakia, who are in this tournament still, or Czechia was until today, are not thought about like Canada, U.S., or even Finland and Sweden. So and it's easy for me to say because I'm not Canadian, but I think it would have been a really cool story if Czechia would have won, especially if you're an Avs fan. And I know 3 Canadians are Avs players, but the way that Marty Necas played, not just today, but in this tournament, I mean, the guy is having, and you thought this was going to happen with a few guys, right? Getting hyped up for the Olympics. They may play their best hockey. Well, Marty Necas also has the first full season with Colorado thing going for him. But this is the finest season of hockey Marty Necas has ever played for club and for country. And how close did it come today? I mentioned the comments he made before today's game. I mentioned them on yesterday's show where he says, we let Canada win that first one because we knew we weren't going to beat them twice in one tournament. Marty Necas was literally inches away from becoming the Chechen version of Mark Messier. Because he had a breakaway on Jordan Binnington, tried to go 5-hole and just missed it. Binnington just able to slide over in time and make the save. And then Mitch Marner goes on to win it. That's how close Marty Necas was to doing what Mark Messier did and basically guaranteeing a win. And on this stage, no less. But he was phenomenal. All the Avs continue to be really good. And that's really been, I think from an NHL standpoint, that's been the story here. Avalanche players have taken center stage. They've performed far better than anybody else's teams have played. Marty Necas was outstanding for Czechia. You have Makar and McKinnon who are contributing to Canada. You have Gabriel Landeskog right now on the ice, leading Team Sweden against the U.S. And then the other game today that maybe not as many eyeballs were on, Artturi Lehkonen does the thing that Artturi Lehkonen always does. He does essentially what Marty Necas couldn't and win an Olympic hockey game for his team on a breakaway goal. Artturi Lehkonen in overtime after Finland was trailing 2-0. They rally, force overtime, and Artturi Lehkonen scores a breakaway goal to advance Finland. And if you're keeping track at home, he has sent Montreal to the Stanley Cup final. He sent Colorado to the Stanley Cup final with game-winning goal. He's won the Stanley Cup for the Avalanche with a goal. And now he's won an Olympic quarterfinal game with a goal. I mean, is Artturi Lehkonen the hockey version of Robert Horry or what? Like, literally, that's what Artturi Lehkonen is becoming known for. Just big goals. Not the most goals, but game-winning goals on the biggest of stages. And not for nothing, Avs fans, but he's outshined probably the pound for pound the best player on Finland who used to play for the Colorado Avalanche, in Mikko Rantanen. But these, I saw one tweet. I can't verify. I didn't go back and count, but I think Avalanche players have 16 goals. The next closest team has like 7, and that's Ottawa. These Avs players have been outstanding on the biggest stage. Now, what does that say about the Avalanche? It means nothing as far as the Avalanche's chances of winning a Stanley Cup, but what it does say, I guess it does say a little bit about their chances to win a Stanley Cup, because what it says is that the Avs are the most talented hockey team in the world. That there doesn't account for something that their best players go onto the world stage in the Olympics and outshine everybody. I mean, this is not new information in terms of how talented the Avalanche are, but you're seeing it play out on the world stage. The Avalanche's players leading the way for their respective teams. So Arturi Lehkonen advances. Marty H is going to be rejoining the Avs here very soon. Still 1-0 US over Sweden. Got about 12 minutes left in this game. The other thing I wanted to talk about with the Olympic hockey, and this is not a positive. I was unaware. I should have done my research ahead of time, but I didn't. I was unaware that the way we decide the most important hockey games in the world is with mutant hockey. 3-on-3 overtime followed by a shootout. How is this allowed in the Olympics? To me, you look at it just like you do the NHL season. The round robin, the group stage, that's the regular season. You just do what you can to get through the games, right? That's why the NHL during the regular season has 3-on-3 overtime in the shootout. One, because they don't want ties. But two, so you're not playing, 4, 5, 6, 7 periods in one night potentially. And I get it. And I get that's what you do during the regular season. I still don't like it, but I understand the utility of it. But once they get into the Stanley Cup playoffs, what do? 5 versus 5 overtime going until we find a winner. Olympics should be the same way. Group stage, fine. You want to do 3-on-3 overtime. You want to do all these kind of things to make sure you get through all these games. That's fine. But once the round you're in has finals in it, quarterfinal, semifinal, final, 5 versus 5 overtime. Real hockey to determine a real winner. Now, I'm not going to take away from Canada winning because Czechia could have, and same with Finland, not taking away from them because both teams are playing it. I'm just saying this is a lesser form of hockey, unbecoming of the world's greatest tournament that comes around once every 4 years. But both of these overtime games today, 3-on-3 overtime. It's terrible. Need to play 5 versus 5. Hopefully this US-Sweden game doesn't go into overtime. Although it's heading in that direction if Sweden gets one on the board. 1-0 US. If they win, they will play Slovakia. So that means Arturi Lehkonen, Mikko Rantanen and company will play Canada in the semifinals. And then we may get the matchup we were all waiting for, which is US-Canada. Keep you updated on the hockey game. In the meantime, your thoughts on the hockey at the Olympics, 719-24-7-1313. Coming up next, I want to stick with the Olympics, but a big day finally for one of Colorado's favorite daughters. That's next here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. This weekend, the Air Force Army rivalry hits the ice at Cadet Ice Arena for 2 games, one of which is Friday night at 7:05. Saturday is at 5:05. But you can't buy tickets. They're gone, sold out. That's why you have me. And I always say I'm not above bribing you to listen to this radio program. So if you would like a pair of tickets to see Air Force take on Army Friday night at Cadet Ice Arena, just be the 13th texter to text Falcons and your name to 719-247-1313. Still 1-0 U.S., leading Sweden in the Olympic quarterfinals. If they win, they will play Slovakia in the semifinal. One other thing, as far as Canada being pushed to the brink today against Czechia, I talked about thinning out the herd, right? And how these games now are getting more compelling. There's also kind of an interesting dynamic at play here, and I thought about this watching the Canada game early. When you're just like Canada has been, destroying teams, it's kind of hard to lock in and play your best game when it's tighter checking, closer, when the team you're playing is better, and Czechia certainly is better. And just the stakes, too. And by Canada winning, I think it showed 2 things as far as if you're a USA fan. One, it proves my point that Canada is gettable. You can beat them. Okay, Czechia put up 3 goals on them and nearly won the game. So there's no reason to fear Team Canada. But the other part of it, which will make them more difficult to beat, is that they're more locked in now. Right? They're in a more competitive hockey game. And when let's face it, Canada and to an extent as well, the U.S., they could get away with egregious mistakes because they're just on a talent level superior to their opponents. But you add in the stakes, you add in better quality teams, and you can't get away with stuff. And Canada, I thought today, got punished a lot for the mistakes that they made. But now they've kind of been introduced to it, just like the U.S. is right now with Sweden. Sweden's given the U.S. all they can handle here. I think both teams, should the U.S. win, are going to be a little bit more locked in, a little bit better for this experience they have gone through today, because I think Canada will be, which could make them more dangerous, if we're being honest. But again, they are beatable. Still 1-0 USA. One thing that fascinates me in covering sports is the psychology of athletes. I'm fascinated by it. But what fascinates me even more is the psychology of Olympic athletes, because they're a different breed. And maybe I'm not talking about necessarily the hockey players that play all season during the NHL, and then once the Olympics roll around, it's like, okay, we just take what we do in the NHL and move it to the Olympics. I'm talking about the true Olympians, like Michaela Schifrin, who does compete every year, regardless of whether it's an Olympic year or not. But going from the NHL to the Olympics is not as big a jump as it is to go from a World Cup of skiing to the Olympics, because the scrutiny, the spotlight is so much greater and brighter. It's almost like these Olympians don't even, and I mean this with all due respect, But from the general sports fan consciousness, they don't even exist except for once every 4 years. And they're stepping into just a completely different environment where this is everything. Right? These hockey players, I know they all want to win. And they all want to do it for their country and bring home a gold medal. And they might even say that a gold medal is greater than a Stanley Cup. But they face a similar level of scrutiny when they play in the NHL. The stakes are similar. For Michaela Shiffrin and these more, I'll call it traditional Olympians, this is everything. If they don't get it done on this stage, I mean, when's the last time that we mentioned a skier or a figure skater or a gymnast about the world championships they won? It is all about the Olympics, and they only come around once every 4 years. And that amount of pressure, I don't think that athletes in other sports deal with in the same way. And what we are seeing during these Olympics is how these athletes deal with that. And some of them haven't dealt with it well. Ilya Malinin, the quad god, right? The next big thing in men's figure skating. Shoe-in to win a gold medal. By some accounts, took it easy in the team event and still smashed everybody and helped the U.S. win gold. So it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to win a gold medal for himself in his individual event. And he fell not once but twice and missed the podium entirely. And he talked about it afterwards. He said, like, every bad memory, bad thought from his entire life creeped into his head in those moments and completely wrecked him. And now he's done. Not forever, but to him, it's going to feel like forever till he can get back to the Olympic stage and do better. Another figure skater based in Colorado Springs, Amber Glenn, was shaky in the team event. Her teammates were able to pick her up, and she won a gold medal. On her own, yesterday, she bails on one of her elements. Forgive me if I'm not speaking the correct figure skating parlance. And she finishes 13th. She has virtually no shot now of winning a gold medal. And you could see the emotion on her face during the team event, and you certainly saw it yesterday. And what this means, this is not losing in the NBA Finals. Hey, pack them up, go get them next year. And that amount of pressure we have seen from multiple top athletes, some of the athletes that were being followed and chronicled going into the Olympics, are coming up short. Now, I don't think that was the reason for Lindsey Vohn's crash, but I think her comments afterwards spoke to this. And she said the crash was absolutely worth the risk. I mean, it was a horrific crash, and she, couldn't even move. She had to be gurneyed from Italy back home. And she's like, totally worth it, because it was her last chance, but you only get this chance once every 4 years. And that's a level, especially when the hot topic right now in sports is tanking and load management. And no load management or tanking when it comes to these Olympians. They are all out all the time throwing their bodies around and trying to achieve something that is provided as an opportunity once every 4 years. The mental fortitude that these athletes have is beyond their ability to flip and twist and jump and do all the things that they do. The fact that they're able to do it with as bright a spotlight as they are under, with the pressure that they face, is the most impressive thing about these Olympians. And you thought that maybe that pressure had started to get to Michaela Schifrin. Going into today, she had lost 8 consecutive Olympic loss, failed to medal in 8 consecutive Olympic races. I mean, that's like, Ray Bork going to, it's not actually 20 years, but it feels like, how long Ray Bork went without winning a title. I mean, it's like, I forget, is dog years shorter than people years or whatever? Are there more dog years than people years? I think there are. Everything's in a microwave. Everything is exponentially greater. So you go one race, it's like 10. And Michaela Schifrin had gone 8 consecutive Olympic races without a medal. And you were wondering, how, even going into an event that is her specialty, the slalom, you still wondered, because she did the slalom in the team event where Breezy Johnson finishes first and Michaela Schifrin finishes like 15th. And I talked about this the day it happened. If she finishes 10th, they're on the podium. I mean, it was a disaster. So you wondered what her state of mind was, even for somebody that had done it before, had won 2 gold medals previously. You still wondered. Well, you don't have to wonder anymore, because Michaela Schifrin didn't just win gold today in slalom. She dominated. In fact, because I'm going to say what she won by, and you're going to be like, big deal, 1.5 seconds. If you add up the margin of victory for every winner in that event since 1998, every single winner's margin of victory leading up to Michaela Schifrin today, it would be 1.51 seconds. Michaela Schifrin basically beat the field today in the slalom by as much as every Olympic champion has since 1998 combined. We try to make comparisons from sport to sport. I don't even know what that would compare to. Like, what is the other sport comp that you can make? I mean, it's like, if the average margin of victory for every Super Bowl winner added up to some amount, and the Seahawks just beat the New England Patriots by that much in one game. The last 5 or 6 Super Bowl champions, you add up their margin of victory, and then the Seahawks beat New England by that much. That's crazy. So she didn't just get off the schneid. She didn't just get right today. She may have skied her best race ever today, with the pressure, not only that comes along with being in the Olympics, first of all, but had been being one of the more high-profile Olympians who had just so happened to gone 8 straight races in the Olympics without a win. I mean, just you're just in awe. Great for Michaela Schifrin. What what a way to put all that other stuff past her. And now you kind of look at it, you're not talking about the 8 race medalist streak here. Now you're talking about Michaela Schifrin being the most decorated athlete in her sport ever. 3 gold medals. She becomes the youngest and the oldest to gold medal in that event. $13.13. Back with more after this on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Oh boy. A lot has happened in the last couple minutes while we've been apart. The U.S. just beat Sweden in overtime. Thanks to Quinn Hughes, again famously known as the world's second best defenseman. So again, another one of these quarterfinal games decided 3-on-3, which is an abomination. But the U.S., Finland wins thanks to Arturi Lehkonen. Canada wins thanks to Mitch Marner. And now the U.S., take a deep breath, U.S. fans. Hope is still alive for the U.S.-Canada final coming up here in a few days. But Quinn Hughes gets the game winner in overtime, just beats Jacob Markstrom, Devils goalie, glove hand with the wrister. Oh. Mika Zibanejad scored with 90 seconds left in the third period to tie the game. And they have a thing in hockey where the last 2 minutes and the first 2 minutes of a period are massive momentum swings. Like, you can swing the momentum at any point during the game, but if you score a goal in the last couple of minutes or the first couple of minutes of a period, that is like you multiply it by 10, the momentum that you get from that. So Mika Zibanejad scores with 90 seconds left in regulation, going into overtime. That is a massive momentum swing for Sweden. A necessary one because they wouldn't have won the game had they not scored. Thank goodness I wasn't watching it because I was in the middle of talking about Michaela Schifrin. I might have fainted watching Mika Zibanejad tie it with 90 seconds left. But Quinn Hughes to the rescue, my Minnesota Wild defenseman with the winner. So 3 overtime winners today, Arturi Lehkonen and Mitch Marner and Quinn Hughes. It will be U.S. versus Finland, or excuse me, U.S. versus Slovakia, and it will be Canada versus Finland in the semifinal. And then, of course, we're all waiting Canada, USA in the women's final, which is tomorrow at just after 11 o'clock. Still should not be decided by 3-on-3 overtime. See, now you could trust me, because before, when I said that, you could say, oh, Ryan, you just wanted Canada to lose. And because they won in 3-on-3, that's why you call it mutant hockey and all that kind of stuff. No. Team USA wins. Still saying shouldn't be 3-on-3 overtime. But happy that the U.S. was able to get it done. This coming in from Scott and Florissant. You stole my comment. Was watching Canada today, and when they came right back on the ice after the third, I said to myself, no way they're doing 3-on-3 to find a winner. No bueno. No bueno indeed. But the U.S. Gets it done. So onward and upward towards Canada, U.S. potentially. Slovakia and Finland both trying to play the role of spoiler. Want to talk about something that's developing today in the NFL. And what is developing is an arms race in the AFC West between the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Chargers. Because you already knew that the Broncos being done with the Russell Wilson dead cap hit, that they could be real players in free agency, that theoretically they could get anybody they wanted. Right? Anybody on the free agent market, the Broncos can afford them. Obviously, does the player want to go there? All that kind of stuff. But before they were hamstrung, they had to rub a couple pennies together, take some chances on J.K. Dobbins and Dre Greenlaw, who had lengthy injury histories or recent injuries. They don't have to do that anymore. They can go big ticket item shopping. And I said yesterday, the big ticket item that they should be looking for, knowing Sean Payton, would be A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles. I also throw out Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks in a world where Davis Webb brings a more balanced Broncos offense to the table in terms of play calling. Kenneth Walker would fit. Broncos could afford both of them if they are able to convince Kenneth Walker to sign with the Broncos, if the Seahawks let him truly get to free agency, and then if they're able to work out a deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, now the Chiefs have entered the fray because today they have restructured Patrick Mahomes' contract again. And I remember saying this when he signed, what was it, $500 million, $250 million contract, whatever it was. Everyone said, it's going to ruin Kansas City. There's no way they can continue to compete. And maybe if he would have stuck at that number, they wouldn't be. But the NFL allows you to turn salary into signing bonus. So basically, the Chiefs just scratch a big old fat check to Patrick Mahomes, give it directly to him, or direct deposit it. I don't know how it works. And now they get cap space. They will also cut Jawan Taylor. They'll probably cut Rashee Rice after the latest allegations. His girlfriend is suing him, alleging just horrible abuse from Rashee Rice. And, you know, innocent until proven guilty, but Rashee Rice already has something on his record to where I can't say that I would dismiss these allegations out of hand. But we'll see what happens with Rashee Rice. But the fact of the matter is the Kansas City Chiefs are clearing up space. And have some needs that are very similar to the Denver Broncos. Chiefs need a running back. Chiefs need weapons. We could be seeing a bidding war for some of these players between two AFC West rivals, which would spice things up a bit more than it has been spiced up between the Broncos and the Chiefs in the last year or so. But especially if they end up cutting Rashee Rice, they desperately need weapons for Patrick Mahomes, just like the Broncos need weapons for Bo Nix, and both teams very much need to, first of all, commit more to the run, but have running backs that can produce if they do commit to the run game more. And let's be honest about this, given the way this season went on, who's the team that needs cap space more? Denver Broncos or the Kansas City Chiefs? Based on how they fared this year, you could argue Kansas City needs cap space more than the Broncos do at this point. But the Chiefs restructuring Mahomes' deal means they're going to be a player in free agency. And it's going to be hard to convince somebody, with all things being equal, to not want to join up with Patrick Mahomes if you're somebody that gets thrown the football for a living. Now, Broncos still have more money, so maybe all things won't be equal. But the Chiefs are in this. And even with the constant restructuring of Patrick Mahomes' deal, they haven't always been an active player in free agency. They will be this year. And they got the same shopping list as the Denver Broncos do. Speaking of the Broncos, a report here just at the end from Mike Kliss of 9 News saying that signing Alex Singleton is a reported priority for the Denver Broncos. My answer to that would be why. Like, I get what Alex Singleton has gone through, and it's a great story and a great guy to root for. And by all accounts, he is a phenomenal teammate and a great human being, the work he does in the community. But from a football perspective, why is re-signing Alex Singleton a top priority? One, it's not one of the more important positions on the field. And two, you have a younger, perhaps cheaper option at that same spot in Justin Strnad. And if you're going to re-up Alex Singleton, are you going to keep Dre Greenlaw and Justin Strnad? So that being the first bit of intel coming out of the Broncos in terms of their plans for the offseason, I don't get it. I mean, you'd like to have Alex Singleton back, sure, but in a vacuum. But again, you have Justin Strnad. I thought that would be an easy place for the Broncos to save a little bit of money as they try to address other bigger needs elsewhere on the football field. I mean, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. So the Broncos, it could be a top priority, but maybe not the top priority. And the Broncos can get other things done while bringing back Alex Singleton. It's a weird thing to come out as a top priority, considering they have options at that spot, which is a spot that is far from the biggest need of the Denver Broncos. So we'll see how that goes as we get closer to the NFL offseason. Want to bring you this from the fine folks at Low T Center. You know, recovery changes as we get older. We don't bounce back as quickly. You stay active, you work out, you try to take care of yourself, but your body just, again, doesn't bounce back the way it used to. Even when you're doing everything right, sometimes it's still not enough. That's where peptide therapy can help. Synergenx and Low T Center offer options like Sermomo. I don't even know what that is. NAD plus GLP-1s. I know those. And others that support recovery, muscle tone, sleep, and even weight management. When you go in, you're talking with real medical providers who explain what each peptide does and which ones make sense for your goals. They also have discounted peptides and GLP-1s right now, which makes it easier to explore what might help you feel better day to day. If you want your body to keep up with the lifestyle you're trying to maintain, take a look at what peptide therapy can do. Learn more at synergenx.com or lowtcenter.com. I got to head to Extra Mile Arena. I'll be back with you at 6:30 for Air Force and Boise State on Extra Sports 1300, and talk to you later.